In this video, we'll be providing an update on the ongoing research and development of quadruped models for Xarkin Studio. This video will show a Xarkin quadruped model, how this model can be used to generate motion using Xarkin Studio, and finally how this motion can be applied back to a character in Blender to create the desired motion. For this demonstration, we downloaded the mesh and skeleton of a lion from an animator on the web and mapped this to the Xarkin quadruped model. All the motion that we are showing here has been generated, and equally important, we have not performed any keyframe tweaking, so it is all parameterized motion based upon what we wanted to show. There are many different gaits and poses shown here, all stemming from a single Xarkin model. By blending the various gaits together, we are able to show the lion prowling low and slow initially, picking up speed and eventually leaping. As with all Xarkin topologies, we support various gaits, allowing parameterized inputs that make subtle or not so subtle artistic expression possible in a fraction of the time where the animator required to keyframe all of this. Let's take a look into how this works. To get things started, we're going to first import the lion character that we downloaded from the web, and we'll bring the lion character to the stage in Blender. This will bring the mesh and the skeleton into Blender. The next thing for us to do is to make sure we understand where the root of the armature, what it's called. So we'll go in the upper right and we'll expand it, and we can see that root is called root in this case. And now we can launch Xarkin Studio with the root identified, and Xarkin Studio launch. First thing that'll come up will be the mapping. That's the humanoid topology. We'll switch to quadruped, and once in quadruped we can preload previous mappings. In this case we're going to use Lioness 1, and we can zoom in and out here. We can hold down the left button, mouse button, and rotate. If we look in the upper right, we can see the various mappings that have been made between the two skeletons. And in the lower left, we can click Done, and it will load the model into Xarkin Studio. Now we have a single frame here, so the first thing we'll get busy with is we'll load from the cloud. So we're going to load an action from the cloud. We'll select a trot, full cycle, and we'll repeat it 3 times. We'll replace the single frame that's on the stage. We'll click OK, and Xarkin will generate that motion for us. Next, what we'll do here is we'll rotate the stage so we can see our character, and we're going to play the motion, and we can see the motion's going quite fine. And we can turn the mapping on to show what the mapping looks like for the character that we have in Blender, and that looks quite good as well. Now we can save that as a motion generation file, and that's the file we'll use to import on top of the character inside of Blender. So let's go back to Blender. We've got our lion still there, and so now we'll import, and we'll reference that motion file. We'll bring that in, we'll load it. Now I took the liberty of cutting out the frames. It does take a little while to generate all that pose data. So right now it's generating pose data. Pose data has been generated, and when we hit play, we've brought motion. With very little effort, we've brought motion to the character on the stage. So we can scrub it to see how the cat moves. And all in all, it's looking pretty good. So let's pause now. Let's go back into Xarkin Studio, and let's just make a minor change to give you an idea of how you might do this sort of thing in Xarkin Studio. So we're going to go to the interval, And next what we'll do is we're going to designate where the interval is by marking the triangles there. And we're going to adjust the heading. We're going to adjust the heading 24, 23 degrees left. So now when we play, we can see that the Xarkin Studio skeleton is deviating at the end of the cycle from the map skeleton. When we map the skeleton and refresh it, it's all back to normal. So we'll save this Mogen file. Give it a name, just extend the name we already have. Save that file. And now let's go back to Blender. So back in Blender, once we've imported that file, I skipped that step here on the video. Once we import that file, we can see that the lion now makes that 23-degree turn. And that's how we can bring motion into Blender, having made some modifications in Xarkin Studio. So far we've shown what we can do with the lion character using Xarkin Studio. However, Xarkin greatly broadens the definition of retargeting motion. Through physics-based motion generation in a simulator, Xarkin can take the motion generated for one character, the lion that you've seen, and retarget that motion for another character of the same topology, but dissimilar in most other respects, such as the dog you see here. We've downloaded the mesh and skeleton of another animator and taken the motion we've generated for the lion and applied it to this character. The result is not identical, as the dog has different dimensions and mass distribution than the lion. Xarkin handles all of this, so the gaits and their component movements travel different distances and generate different frames. The result, though, is compelling. The same prowl followed by a quickening pace leading to leaps occurs, albeit with the dog in this case. This concludes our update on the progress we've made in generating motion for quadrupeds. If you are interested in learning more about how Xarkin can be used to bring motion to your characters, we look forward to hearing from you. Just reach out through the form on the website. We'd also like to thank BlendSwap and the animators whose characters we've used to demonstrate Xarkin's quadruped capabilities.